Welcome to Small Practice Support information session number 45. In this Law Society environment recording, Michael Rooney of Future Range talks to Justin Purcell about cybersecurity and technology tools for protecting your office.
You're all very welcome for joining us to this Law Society Small Practice Information session. Today, I'm talking with Michael Rooney from Future Range about cybersecurity technology tools for protecting your office. So, Michael, you're very welcome. I'd just like to introduce Michael. Has over 20 years experience in the ICT market. He's held senior management positions in several IT companies, and he's recently bought or Future Range, and he's the owner. And the role of Future Range is to assist clients in assessing the right solutions, security solutions for their business. So, Michael, you're very welcome. We're really excited about having you today. So, over to you. I'll stop the share, and you can hand over. So, if anyone actually would like to ask a question, we'll take it on the chat, and we'll end at around 22, 23 minutes and ask more questions as well. So, Michael, you're very welcome.
Thanks, Justin. Thanks for inviting me to speak. As I said, I'll try stay away from too much technical talk and keep it as simple as I can. If you do have any questions, feel free to ask them. I'll just take a minute to just tell you about who Future Range are. We've been in business since 1995, and from the beginning we specialized in secure remote access. As the business evolved, our customers started asking us about security, and kind of not by plan, but we ended up as a security specialist company as well. So we were probably one of the first companies to implement two-factor authentication in Ireland. And our specialist nature has given us the opportunity to work with customers of all sizes. So we do a lot of work with government, semi-state, healthcare. We work with some of the leading law firms in Ireland, and then right down to the kind of 2 or 3 man businesses. From a security perspective, it doesn't really matter what size the company is. You still need to be protecting your assets and reputation, your digital estate. There are many, many low-cost steps and solutions used to protect your business that won't cost a fortune. And in fact, you can probably fully secure your desktop or laptop for the price of a cup of coffee a month. So in this session, we'll focus on the simple tools that we use to protect your data in your office. So this slide represents the vulnerable layers that sits between your data and the outside world. And again, I could talk about this all day, but I'll briefly touch on each layer and the tools that are used to protect that. So we'll start, just give you a bit of information on how a lot of cyber attacks start and the stages. So this is called the cyber kill chain. The kill chain is a series of steps that traces the steps of a cyber attack. It's much like someone trying to break into your house. From the early reconnaissance stages to the data, getting the data out, the kill chain helps us understand and combat what ransomware and security breaches look like. It was developed by a guy called Lockheed Martin, and it's a military framework. So I'll just move on to the next layer. So
Michael, do you mind just going back to that other last slide and just talking us through just quickly what, like, they're observing the stage of attackers, and like just briefly give us a synopsis of each of the stages?
Yeah, well, I suppose, look, if someone wants to, you know, they're not got, this method would be if you've identified a company that you're trying to breach, and there's loads of ways of doing it. So we work with some cyber consultants, and they'd be dropping USB keys in car parks and stuff like that. But I suppose they typically observe and assess the situation and scan your network from the outside. And based on the reconnaissance phase, they'll identify your weakest areas and how people are going to get in. So we see a lot of, like, if we run our own scans on networks, we see a lot of vulnerabilities that are dating back, 5-6 years, vulnerabilities that have been flagged in IIS servers, and they're an easy way to get into your network. So then they act on it, and when they do get into your network, they've usually compromised one of your passwords, and in a lot of networks, the same password is used on all the devices. So we'd see a lot of companies when we take them on that they've got the same local admin password across 10 devices or 20 devices. So if I can get onto one device, I can get onto them all. And so that allows them to move laterally across the network. And kind of once they're in at that level, it's very easy then to get at your data and your network and your Active Directory and your server. And then they usually, a lot of the time, they clean up after themselves. So in a lot of instances, you don't actually know that someone's been on your network unless you've got some sort of advanced threat protection or log monitoring you can look back on or alert you in real time as to what's kind of going on. Does that make sense, Justin?
Yeah, that's great.
Okay. So
password protection is key to stop them migrating across the network.
Yeah, this is stuff that can be done for free. It's just best practices that people should be doing, not using the same passwords. If you've got 5 different laptops, that the local admin device on each laptop is different. So if one device is compromised, it stops them easily getting across your entire network. And then again, with the SIEM or log management solutions, it'll alert you to, someone has tried to log on to a laptop 3 times or something like that. So without that type of software in place, you're kind of blind. You'd have to go looking for it yourself in logs. So I'll just move on to those vulnerable layers that I discussed. So the first step is outside of your control. So you've no control over people, sending in malicious emails or phishing emails. And one of the things that I'd be interested to hear how many of you are aware of is DMARC. So DMARC, when it's implemented, stops people impersonating your domain, which is your email address. So if you're michael@lawfirm.ie, it's very easy without DMARC being implemented for me to send an email on your behalf with your exact email address to any recipient. So we can easily download spoofing tools on the internet that are used for phishing, but they could also be used for nefarious purposes. And because DMARC is controlled by DNS records, and I'll try not to get too technical on this, but because it's a DNS record, it's publicly available. So last week, just before I started doing this presentation, I had a quick look at 5 of the kind of leading law firms in Ireland, and 4 out of the 5 of them have DMARC turned on and implemented on a stage called P=reject, which means that only your assets can send email on your behalf. So your assets might be Office 365. It could be a contact form on your website. It could be MailChimp for sending out mailing lists. So what it does is you control those assets, and we use software called OnDMARC, which makes it very easy to set up. And we enter those assets into your SPF and DKIM record, which provides an authentication. It embeds authentication in the email that you're sending. So if email hasn't been sent from one of your assets, it's treated as spam at the other end and rejected. So it stops people impersonating your domain, which is I understand, a big concern for law firms, particularly, with transferring funds and stuff like that. So your mail doesn't necessarily have to be hacked for this to happen. Without DMARC implemented, anyone can send a mail on your behalf. So when we run a threat intelligence report, it's often quite scary. So the last one we did was for a government agency, and it showed that mail had been sent from 50 locations throughout the world, and their understanding was the only place that should be sending mail on behalf of the company is from Dublin. But again, this is something that's really easy to set up. It's not particularly expensive and gives you control over what's happening to your domain and email addresses. It'll instruct the ISPs and Yahoo and Microsoft and all those guys on how to handle your mail. I'll briefly touch on third-party email protection and scanning. Again, you can't stop someone trying to send a phishing mail into your network, but you can control what happens when it arrives. So Microsoft Office 365 is great at stopping viruses coming into the mail system, but it's not so great when it comes to spam and phishing. So around 2019, we noticed a big increase with CEO fraud and CEO impersonation. And that could be, if you don't have DMARC implemented, it could be the actual CEO's email address, or it could be that 1 or 2 letters is changed in the domain name. So Office 365 isn't great at stopping this. It's not aggressive enough. So third-party solutions like Spam Titan, and again, there's loads of them. And not trying to sell you Spam Titan, pick any of them. They all have the same kind of service levels that they guarantee that they'll stop 99.9% of these phishing and spam mails coming into your inbox. So this kind of stuff happens outside of your network. As I said, there's no control. You can't lock people down. They can probe your network, but you can control what happens to your mail when it arrives, and you can stop people sending mail on your behalf with DMARC. Again, Spam Titan, very low cost solution. It's only like about $150 per user per month. So very, very cheap to give you some peace of mind. So the next layer is the perimeter. So the perimeter, as we were talking about earlier, has changed. It used to be confined to your office and protected with a firewall, but now you've got, and I'm sure you've heard this on other webinars and talks, but you've got your assets and your corporate assets now on your home network, the same network that your teenagers might have their laptops on. They could be downloading movies, downloading God knows what. And because it's on the same network, if their laptop or device is compromised, it gives them an entry point onto your laptop. It allows them to start probing it for weaknesses. So the way we connect is evolving. So you've probably heard, or may not have heard, of zero trust network access, which often referred to as a software-defined perimeter. These are used to provide secure access to the applications rather than the network. So it allows people to connect to the assets and the data they need without exposing the entire network. So this is the future of VPN, and it's often described as the replacement for the traditional SSL VPN. So it introduces various methods of authentication and identity. So it might be where you're located, and who you are, and what time of day you're accessing, what device you're accessing it from. These zero trust network access devices can be self-hosted within your on-premise solution, or they could be cloud hosted. And they're usually offered as a fully managed service. Zero trust network access is guided by the notion that no one is trusted by default. So even users who are given some level of permissions are not presumed to be trusted elsewhere. This zero trust stance leads to solutions that adopt the least privilege approach. So each user is given the bare minimum of what they need in their network. So if the device is compromised, it can't get to the other important parts of your network that control how your business operates. The legal customers we have, before they let their customers or their users onto their network, they scan their laptop or PC to make sure it's part of their domain, or that it has something recognized on the laptop to indicate that it's from X legal firm. They'll also scan to make sure that it has up-to-date antivirus and a firewall turned on. And we achieve this using the likes of NetScaler and cloud firewalls, Netscope and Zscaler, which gives you really granular control of who and what can access your network remotely. Of course, it kind of goes without saying that all this should be protected with two-factor authentication. So again, your password could be 1234. It doesn't really matter. If you've got two-factor authentication turned on, no one can get in without having your mobile device as well, or whatever two-factor you use. We'll move on to human error. So this is often the weakest link in the chain. So you can put all the controls and software in place, but it doesn't stop people making mistakes. So I'll briefly just talk about phishing. So phishing, we're all aware, it's people sending emails in. So if you don't have your Spam Titan, or if your email address is hacked, or one of your customers' email address is hacked, they could send in a phishing mail that looks legit. Again, low-cost solutions. We use a product called Sophos. So Sophos will send phishing mails that will arrive in your inbox and try to trick your users or staff into clicking the link in the mail or doing something they shouldn't be doing. So if they do click the wrong link, they're brought to a training video and educated as what not to do and what to watch out for. Again, very, very low cost thing to do and something that everyone should be doing. So one of my favorite products I'll kind of discuss next is Ziver, and I really think this is something everyone should be using. And it prevents human error, and I'll explain how it does it next. So with Ziver, we have actually one of our customers, a large healthcare client, is implementing this at the moment. Last year, they had about 80% of their data breaches they attributed to human error and mostly sending emails to the wrong person. So Ziver is what you need to stop that. So if we look at the screen here, we can see this email is being sent from Gmail. So it plugs into your web browsers, and at the top you'll notice a triangle there. So it's alerting us that we have business sensitive information in the attachment, and we haven't sent that mail to Claire Drummond before. So it's alerting us to say, are you sure we're sending this to the right person? And down the bottom, you'll see that the secure send is on with recipient verification access. If we look at the next screen, we can see that financial information has been sent. So with Ziver, when it's set up at first, we set up business rules and classification. These rules help you stay in control of the information security while also meeting your regulatory requirements. So you set the business rules and how each email or the information in the email is treated. So the business rules we have set up here for financial information is just giving us a warning that there's financial information in the email, and it's suggesting that we send this securely. So sending it and securely and encrypting it is only a matter of hitting that box on the left-hand side of the screen with the padlock. The next mail, we have medical information. So the business rules we've classified for medical information are slightly higher than the financial, and it's giving us a really clear warning message here that there's medical information in the attachments that we're sending to Wendy, and it's strongly suggesting that we should send this securely. So Ziver is watching what you type, and it's analyzing the attachments that you're attaching. So if we want to send this securely, and Wendy is one of the customers we deal with a lot, we'll have set Wendy up with a form of two-factor authentication. So that could be that we've already entered Wendy's, within the Ziver system, we've entered Wendy's mobile details. Or if Wendy's part of a bigger organization, we may have given that organization a PIN code to retrieve these mails. So what that would look like is when we go to send it, we can determine what way we'd like Wendy to receive that token. So in this case, we have Wendy's mobile number added. If Wendy wasn't someone that we send email to frequently, they can sign up for a free Ziver account to validate that the email has arrived in the right place. So this stops, last year I was transferring quite a large sum of money to a solicitor, and before they sent me an email with their bank account details, and before they allowed me to do the transfer, they wanted to make sure that the mail hadn't been intercepted, and I got it, the bank details were right. So if they had been sending the mail through Ziver, no one else would have been able to intercept that mail or change the details. So it's all within that secure network. So the final example is an email that the business has classified as secure and must be sent securely. So in this scenario, and I suppose in the law, on the side of the law side, you'd be doing this with financial information and personal information. The user doesn't have any option but to send it securely. So Ziver has detected that there's intellectual property attached to this mail, and they have no choice but to send it securely. So it must be encrypted, and it has to go to the right place. So the benefits of implementing something like Ziver are you get real-time monitoring. So when you send that email, it's a bit like WhatsApp. You can see when it's been opened. You have the ability, because it sits in the Ziver cloud, the secure mails, you have the ability to retract the email or say how long the email is available for, or stop the customer from sending that email on. You're forcing two-factor authentication at the other end. So that could be something, as I've mentioned, you've pre-set up. They get an SMS or they have a Ziver account already. It's encrypted end to end. There's guest user support for your own customers. It works with Outlook, which is the most common format for sending emails, and Google Web, Microsoft Web. You can corporate brand it, which looks really good. And it's a secure conversation starter with your clients. So if you're working on a new deal and they see that you're using something like Ziver, it certainly helps a lot. So we'll move on to the next layer, which is endpoints. And I realize I'm flying over all this stuff, but there's probably not enough time to go really in depth into it. But endpoints, when we're rolling endpoints out to our customers, we have a kind of 3 pillars of security, and that's to make sure they're encrypted, make sure they're managed so that we have the controls in place, and we operate the zero trust mechanisms that we mentioned earlier. So what can happen to the endpoints? So these are the type of malware that can get at your endpoint and affect it. So ransomware is the thing that keeps me awake at night. And we've got our viruses, our worms, trojans, keyloggers, spyware. Whilst it's not great getting any of them, you certainly don't want to get hit with ransomware. So there's some statistics, recent statistics in ransomware. So the thing that really stands out to me, it's terrible having to pay if you pay out, but what really sticks out there to me is the downtime. So I don't think any business can afford to be down for 23 days while you try to restore their service. Now, I realize you guys are smaller firms, so you'd expect that number to be a lot lower. But if we look at a recent example in Ireland, a couple of universities and colleges got hit. So on the 1st of April, Tala IT got hit with ransomware. And this is publicly available on their website if you Google it. A month later, they still weren't back in service. And even now, I checked last night, they still haven't restored everything. So we can only speculate what might have happened. Was it an unpatched system? Why weren't they able to restore from their backup? I'd speculate that their backups were part of their same network. So when they got hit with their ransomware, it also encrypted their backups, which prevented them restoring quickly. So what do we do about it, particularly ransomware? So for our customers, for our enterprise customers, we roll out Sophos. And so Sophos is a suite of security products, and typically a lot of the large enterprises and large legal firms would use it. For the smaller firms and smaller customers, we use Bitdefender. So we like Bitdefender and Sophos because it has machine learning, and Bitdefender have some great examples of having ransomware patched before it actually hits the wild. So they use machine learning. So they learn from all the machines around the world and analyze future threats and patch them before they happen. Bitdefender is also rebranded by a lot of other AV vendors because it's so good. So it gives us secure peace of mind. It comes out ahead in a lot of the Gartner studies as well. So I would say Sophos and Bitdefender are definitely best in class. So endpoint protection, we also need to encrypt their devices. So encryption is free if you've got a Windows 10 device. It can be turned on, and it's something everyone should be doing. If you've got more than one device, you might consider using an encryption manager like Sophos or Bitdefender to manage it. Again, very low cost. Everyone should be doing it. Anyone with a company laptop or anything that moves outside the office needs to be encrypted, which leads on to mobile device management. So again, mobile devices, they've got personal information, they've got company information. You need to control what can be done with them. And if they get lost, you need the ability to wipe them. If you've got if people are using personal devices, you need to separate the corporate data from the personal data. You need the ability to wipe the corporate data without wiping people's personal photos of their kids. So again, if you've got your Office 365 license, MDM may already be included. If not, if you're using a basic license, it's a small add-on to enable that. You can also use Sophos or Bitdefender MDM. Again, low-cost solutions that everyone needs to be doing with mobile devices and tablets. The creme de la creme of endpoint protection, I think, is Tracklocker. So Tracklocker sits in between your detection layer and your control layer. So if we look at the screen on the left, our malware, or Sophos, Bitdefender, or ESAS, or McAfee, they're all trying to detect what's happening. But Tracklocker controls what happens. So it's a control layer, much like a firewall. So Tracklocker only allows your corporate approved applications to run on your device. So that could be 5 applications. It could be Office, it could be Chrome, Firefox, or whatever it might be. If something else tries to execute on it, if someone tries to install a new piece of software, it's blacklisted and blocked. It also has storage control. So if one of your approved applications somehow is hijacked, so if it got past your Bitdefender and Sophos or your AV, and Word, for example, was hijacked, Word is only allowed to access certain areas of your network. So Word should never have to go into your backup server. So it would ring fence that and stop Word getting to parts of your network like Active Directory and destroying it. Somehow it did get hacked. So you've got really granular controls on what can run on your laptop and execute. So again, this gives us really good peace of mind. And for the customers that have Tracklocker implemented, it helps me sleep easy at night and they're protected.
Michael, we're just coming up to the end now of we've only allocated 30 minutes on. So if you want to just
really quickly.
If anybody wants to ask us a quick question, we'll take it there on the chat.
The really important. So backups. You need to make sure your backups are separated from your network. Okay, so if you're using Azure or Altaro, if something did happen, you don't have the other controls in place, and you've get hit with ransomware or whatever that might be. If you've got a good backup strategy in place, it will allow you to recover, and it should be in less than 12 hours. So, with Altaro, we can mount your server or VM in Azure Cloud pretty much instantly. So in that scenario, if your network did go down or your server went down, you can be back online in hours, not days. And I'll skip ahead there. So if you guys have any questions, please let me know. And as part of this future end, you're happy to arrange a free consultancy or security audit with one of our senior consultants for anyone that's on this call, if they'd like to avail of this.
Very good, Michael.
There's so much to get through.
Sure, yeah. I mean, it's a hard task to get through. How do I protect my business in 25 minutes? So
yeah,
totally understand.
I could still be talking about the DMARC now, and there's so much to it. So hopefully this gives you a kind of an understanding of some of the controls or tools that you should be putting in place. I definitely think there's a couple of them everyone should be doing, particularly around the encryption and the likes of the Ziver and Tracklocker.
And what's the one thing you think people should do? I mean, we've talked about this cybersecurity, putting some sort of a report together or implementation for when you're attacked. What is that the one thing they should be doing, like some sort of recovery plan? Or
well, everyone, I suppose, should have a cyber incident response plan. So to develop that, we need to look at the assets you have, what you already have in place, and then what you do if a cyber incident occurs. And everyone's different, so it's got to be slightly different, and you've all got different assets to protect, and you've got different controls already in place. But everyone should have a cybersecurity incident response plan in place. In terms of software, if you're worried about ransomware and viruses, Tracklocker is brilliant. You need to have it in place. It's low cost. Again, you could pair Tracklocker, Bitdefender, for the price of a cup of coffee a month together, and you've got really, really good protection there. If you're worried about data loss, Ziver is excellent. Like, it's really, really good. So if you're not using Ziver, there is one or two other products out there, not quite as good, but it'll do the job. And again, these are used by the top law firms out there. They've got these controls in place.
So I'm just going to show up my last screen there, which is just our future sessions. We're out of time, unfortunately. So next week, Why Dignity Matters at Work. We're joined by Julie Breen. And then the following week, maximizing practice profitability, the benefits of documenting assembly technology on the 2nd of June, the limited liabilities partnerships by the LSRA are coming in to talk to us on the 9th of June. And then on the 23rd of June, the revenue are coming in to talk to us about the new e-withholding tax. So we look forward to having you next week. Michael, thanks a million. I'm sorry we've run out of time, but thanks a million for your time today and imparting your knowledge and your tools around how to make our businesses more secure. So thanks, everyone. Hopefully you'll join us next week. We'll send out the slides and the recording later in the week. Sloan, and have a good
Thanks, Justin. Thank you.
Bye.